1, 2,
Standing
go.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. And I think, like most of the nation right now, it's friggin' cold outside where we are.
It is.
It's very,
It is
very cold. It's
Cold inside.
We got bears.
It's insulting. It's insulting that it's so cold. It's like, you jerks. Why?
And
Why
I love.
people
I
listen
know
to us?
Steve hates winter. I love winter. This is a little too much winter. It's a little too cold.
God.
Yeah. And I noticed, for those of you who are tuning in, I noticed I forgot to change the date on our intro thing because it is new for us.
Yeah.
So the new intro thing. So I will make sure to fix that next time.
I like the 9th better. The 9th was happier times.
It was happier times.
So-
For the 21st, it was.
Yeah.
It was definitely a. Yeah. Anyway.
Let's, though it will infiltrate into some of our conversations, let's not give that man time.
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Let's just not. I'm so sick of him. Oh,
Shant. Yet, as he might say.
yeah.
Gaunt.
So, but we have happier things to talk about, like
Do we?
bankruptcy and sexual harassment, which we shouldn't be laughing about because they are very serious topics, but they are at the core of the two news stories that we want to cover before we start talking about comics. But when we go into our roundtable about current comics, we have a theme, which is DC's All In.
We're going all in.
And
We're going all in.
going all in.
All in.
All in.
So
Or,
deep.
well, I'll do my New Jersey. We're going all in. And we have 6 books to talk about that are all under that particular initiative, and looking forward to that. But first, we got the news, and we got 2 big pieces of news that have hit since we last joined you. And the one that we want to start with is, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I do not understand people rooting for this. I understand being against monopolies, but when you are taking down a monopoly, there's a lot of collateral damage when it collapses into itself. And if you are versed in comic book news, you know that we are talking about the bankruptcy of Diamond. So, Steve, I don't know if you want to get into some of the specifics, but I will throw it over to you.
Well, so it came out. I mean, this is relatively fresh. It's been a week, maybe, where Diamond announced. Steve Jeppy over at Diamond sent a communication out and announced that they have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is a pretty big deal. I'm not going to get into the legal stuff because I don't know it as well as these two would, but this does give them a chance to reorganize their debt, to consolidate, to stay open, to be able to continue to pay employees and to continue to deliver product. So there's no work stoppage at this point. So people who have ordered through Diamond can continue to order through Diamond and expect their books. And again, over the past couple of months, the expectations for deliveries have been all over the map. Some people have been getting their deliveries on time. Some people have been getting their deliveries weeks late, or scattershot from Diamond. So it's been very rocky for the past couple of months, and it kind of I wouldn't say that it started with them closing their New York distribution center and consolidating everything down to Mississippi. However, it actually, it probably goes back even, several months further when they were, laying off a lot of staff. And then, of course, it goes back even a few more years back when we had DC jumping ship during the pandemic and going to new distributors at the time, now Lunar as their single distributor. And then, of course, being followed suit by Marvel, going with Penguin Random House. So, they lost the big two. When you lose the big two in an industry that is like the comic book industry, it makes it very difficult if you are a monopoly or used to be a monopoly to be able to hold everything down in the same way that you are used to. And of course, what got affected with DC and with Marvel, with Diamond becoming a wholesaler, getting the books from Marvel and DC's own distributors, is that the discount suffers a little bit with that. So comic stores were not getting as great a discount as they were when everything was going through Diamond. If they were still ordering through Diamond, obviously. But then, of course, you have other comic publishers that started working with Lunar. I think we had, Scout was one of them, but also Image, a few other publishers as well, but not necessarily going exclusive like DC or exclusive like Marvel. Well, Marvel wasn't technically exclusive. Marvel was exclusive.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, if I was a retailer, I can understand the ease of ordering and being used to something, but why anybody would order Marvel through Diamond over the last year now, that baffles me.
I mean, you're cutting your discount. You're dealing with Diamond's distribution, history, which is, hey, your books might be damaged, or hey, you might not.
That happened a lot.
And it definitely did happen at the beginning with Penguin Random House too. They didn't know how to. They didn't know how to ship comics. They know how to ship, novels and trade paperbacks and those kinds of things. But comic books are a different animal. And at first, for the first month or two, it was a disaster. Books were damaged, destroyed, a mess.
But that was also a very quick remediation.
Exactly, they fixed it.
Quick.
So if you were on the fence early on because of I don't know how good Lunar's going to be. I don't know how good Penguin Random House is. I'm going to stick with what I have. I'm going to stick with who produces and provides my POS system, my cataloging and ordering system. Diamond had their fingers in every aspect of the comic shop experience, and the comic ordering experience, and the distribution, and the merchandising. Everything went through Diamond. Previews itself is a major resource for comic readers as well as comic shops. I mean, just knowing what's going to be coming out, everything that's presented in that. It's pretty big, direct marketing service that Previews provides. And of course, we also have in May, we've got Free Comic Book Day. That's a big thing that started with, or at least not started with, but has been supported with Diamond for such a long time. So a lot of that's obviously up in the air. Diamond was the bank, more or less, for a lot of comic shops out there, where they had lots of credit going in and ordering, because again, it's a not really a big margin, profitable industry if you are a comic shop owner. Or it's very hard to predict. It's very hard to be profitable because it's you're ordering books months in advance,
and there's no returns.
There's no returns. I think Penguin Random House did something with Marvel on that. I think they do have some returns available, but again, it's all by publisher and it's all by book, where they might say, okay, well, you can have returns for these, you can't have returns for anything else, or you get the incentives. Obviously, if you order 100 copies of this, we'll give you some really fancy, whatever. We'll give you another title free, or do all these weird things that publishers do distribution to comic shops that can saddle, unfortunately, some shops with hundreds of copies of unsellable product that they have to deal with, and they can't really return it. They can't really necessarily. I mean, they could give it away, I guess, but but yeah, it's. I know a lot of people were pissed off at Diamond for a very long time. When you are the only fish in the sea, it can be easy to be a target.
Mm-hmm.
And they set themselves up so well to be targets by having long-standing problems, by not responding to their customers very well or very frequently, or fixing issues that have been presented to them for a long time. But I think Bill kind of mentioned it's like praying for their demise really kind of is cutting off your nose to spite your face, because they are such a big player in the distribution market, and especially for smaller publishers. Marvel, they'll be fine. DC, they'll be fine. Image, they'll be fine, I guess, but they just did something very interesting when they completely restructured their discount tiers and kind of screwed comic shops now. They've, what they were doing with...
They're also now Lunar exclusive too, right?
Yeah, now they're Lunar exclusive.
Now
So
they're
when they
Lunar
made that
exclusive.
switch, they cut, the discount that shops have, which, that's how they make money. Like, shops can't make money if they're paying full price for books.
Two things can be true at once, right? And we all have to remember, like, this mode towards binary kind of ways of thinking does not always play out in the way that we think it does, right? You can both agree that Diamond was an abhorrently ran business and had major deficits on the quality of the comic book industry, had a large problem, and is very instrumental into the comic book struggles that we see today, from creation, from distribution, from accessibility. All of those can be true. And also realize that if Diamond goes under, it is going to have major impacts on comic shop owners, on comic shop workers, on readership, on the way. So it's already, I mean, I cut out all of the DC physical issues out of my pull list. I'm not even ordering them from discount comic book shops anymore. I downloaded DC Unlimited and bought the whatever package so I can read books when they come out a month after. I'm going to spend $120 a year and read all the DC I want to, and I have to wait 30 days, which is basically what I have to wait for shipping anyway. So, that's going to change the way I read. That's going to change the impact and how much I get out and go do things, how much money I spend at my local comic shop. Already, I've kind of reduced the number of things on my pull list. And so those things can be true, right? It's changing readership, which is going to have an impact on the livelihood of a lot of people that I genuinely like and care about. Too. So I'm kind of like Bill. I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to celebrate the demise. I can celebrate the fact that this is an instrument of change and that hopefully it will change for the better, but we're not guaranteed that either. It's just a scary transitional time. And I think that, I think there are too many people who are willing to kind of cover one eye and just be like, oh, a thing happened. Yeah, let me be. There's too many people who get off on being on curmudgeons, and then.
In comics, no.
Yeah,
but also on the internet.
Yeah,
no.
But it's not even just that too. I think that is a reflection of real life. I think that's more so. I think it's more pronounced in those places, but it is just a reflection of real life. And most 99% of the people who try to be that aren't good at it. So you're just kind of wasting your time. And I think it does showcase a level of ignorance and being able to really understand and see the moving parts of the actual world that we live in, to have that kind of very focused, kind of nonchalant attitude of okay, this happened, and there's only good that will come out of this because of a bad thing that I think I know. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Yeah. And the thing Steve presented the worry about some smaller publishers in the situation that they might be in. One thing I think you do have to keep in mind is that until I want to say 2010, 2009, so you had at least the first half of the 2000s. If you had an independent book, you could get listed in Diamond.
Yeah.
There was no worry about threshold, which is if you go back to some issues, you'll see like pages and pages of shit that never came out. But if you wanted to get solicited, if you were a small publisher, it was no problem. They eventually did institute a fairly small threshold, but still a threshold, which meant that individual creators, that might be their first book, would probably be barred from a solicitation. But that was something they were very good at. The climate. This is one thing I think Diamond always gets blamed for, which wasn't really their doing. I mean, the industry really changed with Marvel and Heroes World distribution. That was a seismic change because that was the first time there was any exclusivity. Yeah, that was the first time that was ever in play. I think Diamond had a few exclusives, but they were, like Diamond Select toy lines and things like that.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily an entire publisher was only available through one. And there were other distribution outlets like Capital Comics that were lacking in particularly in customer service, and they were the last person standing. I think the only reason that they avoided any kind of antitrust is because if they did throw it into court, I think somebody would view it as publishing and say, hey, there's a tiny bit of publishing, or even throw in when they did basically become the only game in town, you still had issues like manga, which had different distribution level, and was it'd be interesting to find out if anybody ever thought about bringing a suit about monopoly involving Diamond. I don't think I've ever heard that, though it was a concern for a long time. But as Steve mentioned, the publisher is a concern, but to me the bigger concern are some of the comic shops.
Yeah.
Because of the credit system, some of the bigger accounts that they have that owe Diamond millions, like Hastings and Newberry Comics and what's in New York?
Midtown.
Midtown.
No, that's UK.
Yeah. The pennies on the dollar aspect of collections, I think, is that hurts Diamond, but the other side I think is a bigger concern for smaller publishers. I have to plug in my computer, it appears.
Well, one of the things with the smaller publishers too, and the small stores, some of the comments and some of the responses, especially on Bleeding Cool, and the Beat's done a really good job with that as well. In providing a lot of that feedback. There are older store owners and smaller store owners that are just sort of like, well, if it's going to be really hard for me, like I don't want to work with 3 different or 4 different ordering systems. I don't want to have to go to an individual publisher's website and like order the books every month for them. It could be any number of different factors that make it harder for them to get books. And on top of that, some of them are older. Some of them are just like, well, it's just not going to be worth it. If I can't get the credit that I've been getting through Diamond, I just can't run my store. Yeah. And so those people are probably going to go, I wouldn't say go out of business, but they might just say, hey, I'm kind of done running my shop. It's time to.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if those are generally men and women in their early to mid 60s.
Yeah, close to retirement age anyway.
Close to retirement age anyway.
Like this is the sign. Yeah. It's just like with the trucking industry around COVID. A lot of people who were at that age, at that cusp, were like, well, I don't want to have to deal with all the regulations. I don't want to have to deal with all the safety things. I'm just going to take my time. It's time to retire. And this kind of thing, I mean, COVID was bad enough for the comic book industry, but Diamond, if Diamond were to completely go away, I think would be just as much of a seismic, hit to the direct market.
I have a friend who has a good deal of money and is very big in Hot Wheels collecting circles. And his upset was about Hakes Collectibles, which is under Diamond's banner, because he says if he had to deal with any entity, whether if it was Hakes or Heritage, you would choose Hakes any day. For some of the bigger item toy car things that he pulls, it was interesting seeing some of the other reactions, because there are some other things that are under the Diamond banner. One that surprised me was Baltimore Magazine. I did not know that.
Really?
Yeah. And Alliance Game Distributors, which I did know.
Yeah.
So with some of these spin-off companies, I know there's already interested buyers for Diamond UK. And aren't they in a much better position? They're much more. Yeah, they're much more
solvent in the UK. Yeah, the Diamond UK. So. But yeah. The game. Yeah, and I have heard that the games business, the distribution that they do, as well as the catalog, the GTM catalog and magazine. I heard that would be more attractive for somebody to just go ahead and purchase altogether, or just spin off and be its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
As you said,
because it's a very different. It's a different market. It's a different.
Right. And as we've said previously on the show right now, in the past few minutes, this is the type of bankruptcy that the end goal is a restructuring, not everything down. So, whether that's under the current ownership system or something different, that's the intention. So, hopefully what comes out of it, it'll be better for comic shops and for publishers. I haven't heard a hell of a lot of complaints about Random House or Lunar from publishers. I think there naturally were some growing pains, but hopefully Diamond will be in that situation. But it was also kind of a thing when Diamond had, I want to say, 3 straight weeks of delays.
Yeah, it was rough.
It was rough there.
It was more than 3 weeks. It was it was the entire month of December.
It was the entire month of December. Okay.
It was bad.
The scenario that Steve presented of the old timers that wanting one system to order, I think you can tell what kind of stores got hit by that the worst.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I kind of feel bad for them. Distillery was being distributed through Lunar and Diamond, and they chose to go exclusive to Diamond right before Diamond announced bankruptcy. And, they had to come out right away and say, this doesn't change our plans. We're fully confident. You can kind of hear the sweat running down their forehead. Fully confident that they will be able to continue to get our books in the hands of readers. But that's, that exclusivity that we mentioned earlier, that Bill, that you talked about, that's something that I think a lot of companies over the past 4 years, especially, they have a choice, and they're going to, exercise their choice, and I
just did not understand that move to go exclusive with Diamond. It
could have been the terms, and there were
terms were probably really good.
Really, that could have been a lot. That could have been a big factor.
I mean, they're premium book, premium publisher, so their books are all premium, square bound, oversized, gorgeous.
I mean, what options do you have? You got
Lunar.
those 3.
That's it. Yeah.
In a pinch, you have the
Penguin
newspaper distributors, which is just Archie at this point. So they don't have a lot of choices. And if it was a better plan that they offered, it may have been culturally more uncool, but if it was terms that worked for them better than what they would have had from Random House or Lunar, I do understand that.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
with a newer company. Yeah,
but it must have been a kick in the teeth, just a few days later or a week later. It's oh, sorry, we're going through bankruptcy now. It's
yeah.
No.
Little heads up would have been nice, guys.
Yeah, but I can say, as somebody who buys every single Distillery book, I've been disappointed in the fact that the books haven't been coming as regularly or predictably as they had been for a long time. And this past month, I mean, I've had to wait weeks to get issues in. You know, it's not been great. So I'm like, you've gone exclusive to the company that can't get your books into people who want to buy them's hand. So that's unfortunate. Unfortunate timing there, I guess. Yeah.
All right, let's go over to the other big news story that broke. I guess last week. At this point, time is strange right now.
Time is fleeting.
Time is really strange right now. But yeah, I mean, where do you start?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it starts with last year, like last summer. There was a podcast. There was a write-up talking about a couple young women who had filed some complaints and had come forward and were very specific about complaints about a particular extremely famous and extremely well-known and well-respected author and comic writer, and that's Neil Gaiman. And it sort of was kind of like skirted around, I think, for most of last year because there were some big releases. You had Good Omens season 3, Good Omens season 2 had just come out. Dead Boy Detectives, which is not exactly his property, but it was inspired
close enough.
Inspired by his writing. And you also had I think Sandman season 2 over at Netflix was being filmed, or it started being filmed. And again, there was a lot of pausing and stopping and starting because of the WGA and the actor strike. But it didn't seem like it got as much traction last year until just last week when New York Magazine, the author there was Lila Shapiro, published an epic article about not just the few women who had come forward last summer, but basically years-long pattern of this happening with women who were fans, women who maybe weren't fans, but were kind of drawn into his orbit, and just a pretty clear pattern of behavior that's gone on for decades, and a lot of named people were come forward to tell their stories, and also implicating his ex-wife Amanda Palmer.
They're not divorced yet.
They've been separated for.
They've been separated.
Years.
I mean, they're in the middle of a very nasty divorce.
Yeah, it's very contentious from what I understand.
It's not. I mean, I wouldn't call him his current, so much as like it's going to be split. But there's a lot that's going into that, and all of it is icky. All of it. There's nothing good, and this is hard to talk about because, of course, Neil Gaiman's writings for me were a major factor in my love of comics, and not just that, but his prose books. I mean, they're some of my favorite books. Some of the properties, some of the TV shows and movies that are based on his works are some of my favorites, like Stardust and American Gods, and of course the Sandman series. And there's a lot of what he's written over the years that has resonated very strongly with me personally. And so when somebody that you respect so much as a writer, but also as someone who seems to and presents as, a very positive role model for, feminism, for, queer allyship, and for alternative, just supporting sort of alternative ideas, and really supportive of people presenting those ideas, people who are young writers, people who are really interested in, writing themselves and putting stuff out. He was extremely supportive of that, and very, very much a sort of queer, very liberal ally across the board. And obviously that is part of, I guess, the veneer that, you know, when you have people who really do show their true colors, it's very difficult to, you know, to then put the mask back on. And it's been very hard. So there's been a lot of, on this over here, there's been a lot of like reflection on how to separate the work from, you know, the art from the artist. And that's hard. We talked about that before.
It's tough.
Here. You know, it's tough. And you know, I've read some really great articles, some great responses to it, you know, from people who are struggling with the exact same thing. It's like, I want to cut everything off. I can't read it anymore. It's no longer part of, you know, I can't read it without knowing what I know about the author. But I also have read, again, opinions where it's like, I know about the author. I know that I won't necessarily be reading the work the same way. But when I first read the work and how I've enjoyed the work all this time before learning this thing, I can't, and I won't forget that, and I won't, you know, completely eliminate that from my experience. So I'm in the middle. I'm still working through it. So
Yeah.
How about you two? I've talked too much.
Well, so I'll jump in. So I'm with you on the struggling to separate the art from the artist. There are some situations where I can't do that, right? And a lot of that is because things are in situations where things are admitted or they are proven kind of, you know, I don't want to say beyond a shadow of a doubt. This isn't one of those situations, but there are things like that. You know, Chuck Dixon, never going to read a book by Chuck Dixon again. Don't need to go back in time and read that stuff. Just can't. Like, the racism is too much. It is what it is. I'm not, I've got 3 giant tomes of Sandman on that thing back behind me. I haven't read the 3rd one. I haven't finished the series. At some point I probably will, right? Unless something happens. I think with situations like this, that number one, you have to believe the people. Like, when they come forward and say this happened, you believe them. You set them up in the best situation to what. So you acknowledge that they have that they deserve to be investigated, that they deserve to have their moment and have it looked at. So when I say believe them, it's not, you know, look, there are situations where people come forward and make accusations that are just blatantly false. Jussie Smollett exists. There are numerous situations in that, right? But you give them the benefit of the doubt and believe them to the extent that you're like, okay, I will take this seriously. I think it should be investigated. We need to know more. Now, I think things kind of got brought to light that I don't think there's a lot of questions on things that did or did not happen. And that's going to be an issue, right? So I haven't contended with that. But the other side for me is, you know, Steve, you're absolutely right. Those works are very important queer literature, right? Mm-hmm. I am if I am
also just, I think an even more important point, they're very important female forward.
They are.
Yeah.
Bits of literature. And I think that's where that's the bigger complication.
It is. So you cannot have, just from a literary standpoint, you know, like some of my favorite college classes were looking at graphic novels and comics as literature, because they are. You can't have a conversation about queer comics and really not talk about Wanda. You just can't. Like, you have to acknowledge the importance of that and the power of that story, right? That story has power beyond the hand that wrote it. There's also an artist involved in that situation, multiple artists that are also part and parcel of telling these stories. And it is not fair to those amazing artists that put work into those books to tell those stories as well, to say that, oh, no one should ever read this particular story again, right? There are some situations where, like I said, I'm a hypocrite. I'll admit it, right? There are artists who work with Chuck Dixon who wrote some of those stories that don't share his racism. You know, that's a thing. Maybe I'm doing them a disservice by not reading them. I can't speak to that. I just know in this situation, I do struggle with it. I'm not sure where I contend with it as far as the work goes, but Chuck Dixon never wrote a book that's as important as some of the things that Sandman represented. So it's a different, it's not an apples and oranges comparison.
Totally agree.
The other part of this, and look, at the end of the day, a scumbag is a scumbag, whether or not, you know, it just is what it is. If he did what he did, and it sounds like he probably did what people are saying he did, I think that there is more than a kernel of truth to this. I think there's a lot of validity to it. I think that it's been kind of shown to be, at least to some extent, true. Fuck him, right? Like, but and on multiple levels, not only for what he did, especially for what he did, mostly for what he did, but also the cultural implications that come out of that in the moment that we currently find ourselves. I was fascinated by reading articles that were tangentially related to this. The age of the good guy is over, right? The age of the male feminist is dead. And I don't know that that's particularly true, but I do know that it's definitely taken a shot in the mouth, right? It's been dropped. And we live in an age now where it really sucks because people are seeing headlines like this about how, like you said, male feminist, right? Guy who's really sensitive, writes female forwards things. He's the one who's abusing women, but it's not the people who are actively misogynistic, who are actively abusive in their everyday actions, and who do it to the extent that they just normalize it. And so now we're in this weird cultural moment where those guys somehow can get a pass because they just kind of put it out there that this is who they are. The Marilyn Mansons of the world who said, no, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to hide it. And all of a sudden that person is more, he's going back on tour, right? And I love Marilyn Manson, right? I love his music, and I have a big problem with him too. But all of a sudden he is more digestible to mainstream culture right now than something like this, when the degradation that he put women through, including getting them addicted to drugs, possibly rape, that's what bothers me more than anything, is that now it's like, it's kind of like people who are really great with kids who work their ways into groups like the Boy Scouts or churches who then molest those children.
Yeah.
Fuck them forever, man. You abused somebody's trust in you. And I struggle with it so much.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sorry I did like the semaphore hand signals, but yeah, I think it is important to say that 2 of these incidents are under police investigation.
Yes.
And that's a good thing. It's also, as we've suggested, that this is also a time where there's a very bitter divorce going on between him and Amanda Palmer. Amanda Palmer is also an artist that does not have exactly a sterling reputation in regards to how she's exploited fans and musicians and tech people and some of her activities since she started becoming known for crowdfunding her musical endeavors. And I also think that's something that just shouldn't be dismissed, that it could be part and parcel. At the same token, and also important to also say that Neil Gaiman has publicly refuted a lot of these accounts. But when you step away from it, again, this is not new. We knew about this stuff. There were even podcasts dedicated to this last year, but there was something. Shapiro's an excellent writer, and I think that made the difference. I think that's a big key of why there was so much exposure to this, to the Vulture article and the New Yorker article than anything else. It was because she's an excellent writer, She's on his God, and it's just so hard because, and seeing the reaction of a lot of people, a lot of other creators. I mean, there is a sense of shock. I mean, I think there are other creators that if you said that these activities went down, you'd be like, oh, that's not a stretch, from reputations. My only personal interaction was shaking his hand after his opening set for the Magnetic Fields in 2000, at the bottom line. That's my sole interaction with him. And I just, it's really hard. But there are instances where you have to separate the art from the artist. I distributed, beautifully written description of the struggles that Mags had.
Yeah, and thank you for that.
Yeah, and that was mostly in relation to Harry Potter and whatever the hell J.K. Rowling has become, and with being so musically based, Morrissey has been a huge bone of contention for people, that had their lives saved by the Smiths lyrics, and then that person who they viewed as a savior in a sense is not somebody that you'd want to invite to dinner.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing that I think anybody that took away from Mag's writing was that the good you found in Sandman is still there. It's just that the authors have to be viewed in a different context now, and that's true about any writer, And also, the other thing that I just wanted to say, like, even if the stuff was consensual, some of the shit was weird. I mean, it was really weird.
Well, and I think that's where it goes into exploitation. I mean, you mentioned it with Amanda Palmer, and she has a tendency with her fans. Like, her fans are so devoted, like and there aren't that many artists out there that do this, that really have a particular set of fans that are normally vulnerable, who are outcasts, who are looking for a kind of acceptance and family that they're finding in a particular artist, and then they're easier to use. And this is kind of the same thing that Neil has. I mean, he's a rock star for comic writers, but a rock star for alternative goth outsider writing. And
also I probably should amend what I said about the female forward, because I do think, on top of all of this, that Death, the High Cost of Living is one of the most on-point allegories about growing up while AIDS was in full force. And it's subversive. It's never overt in that story. Omnipresent. And so I should amend what I said, that, probably the queer representation is just as important. I just wasn't hitting on that particular story.
Yeah.
When I said that.
We have some comments actually here. Both Lima Nato, and James Figueredo have joined us. So Lima and James, hello guys, handsome as ever. And James, good evening, ladies and gents. Well, good evening, hello, and thank you. And Lima goes on to say, it became kind of a sad aspect of life to discover the monsters behind our idols. I was a very dedicated fan of Morrissey, who never hid his political inclinations, but now to see Gaiman being a person who's even worse than Morrissey, it's a very low place for a human being. And that is tough, when you have somebody who's very honest. And this is, I think, Caleb, this is kind of what you were saying. It's like, here are people being openly, committed assholes, and being like, oh yeah, I treat women like shit because they deserve it, and somehow they're getting a pass because, well, this person you put on a pedestal, well, clearly they're just as bad. So I guess these guys are okay too. Like, there's some mental gymnastics that happen, and this happens a lot. But it's, that is kind of the feeling. And then James, Morrissey has been such a tough pill to swallow. I mean, he has been. As James had been talking with Lima, Gaiman had to write to be this sack of shit of a person. Like, it is tough. It is tough.
Want to talk about something brighter?
Yes, please.
Yes,
I have to preface it. I'm taking the spotlight right now. It's all on me, because I want to talk about this. It's all on me right now. I have been very public with my buddies here and other people that we know that I have not been the most vociferous comic book reader or even fan over the last 2 years. Something happened, and I just have really lost interest. And God's honest truth. If it wasn't for you two guys, this show probably would have ended 2 years ago. If it was me as a solo thing or gone on hiatus, it just wasn't happening. I just wasn't feeling the enthusiasm that I've had at this point for like 20 years since it all kind of rekindled. Didn't do much over the weekend. Long weekend here, since a lot of us had MLK Day off. And I used some of that time to get caught up on DC's All-In books. I read everything from the first All-In book that I personally had, which went up to, I think, the first week of January, with thankfully the DCBS with your shipping. I got a few of the January books in. And I have to say, this was the most fun I've had reading comics in 2 years, at least, if not much more than that. I had a blast going through every one of those books, a bunch of number one issues. Almost everything is like a restart, even if there's no change in creative teams. And that's what you've seen with Batman and Wonder Woman and Power Girl. It's the same creative teams, pre and post Absolute Power, but there were very definite breaks in the action, very definite periods of opening a new door. And there was so much I liked. There was only one book I didn't like. I talked to you guys about it, Catwoman. I don't know what that was, but that's not bad considering, I think this encompasses, I want to say 34 titles, if my count was right. I think there might be that many. Man, I had such a good time, and I'm like looking at it like, it's Batman. It's like, I really don't get excited about reading Batman, but what's happening over in Detective? And there were things that I noticed. It seems that there's a move away a bit from DC's house style.
Yeah. Yep.
Has, moved forward from New 52 onward. In terms of art, the colors are brighter, even in books where the darker tones, whether it's Batman or Poison Ivy, where it makes sense. It just seems that there's a concerted effort for a new time. Some of it is completely ingrained in the 3 Absolute books that have come out so far, but I had so much fun this past weekend reading comics, and I have not been able to say it. I'm almost crying because I thought there was a part of me that thought this was done. I thought I was over this, and I was maintaining enough of an interest to keep this show going and to keep the collecting going. But man, I needed that weekend so bad. I needed that experience so badly, and I know you guys you picked up on it as soon as I was emailing, and how many I read,
I think it goes back to the conversation that we had though, right? Like sometimes we feel like we have to read and we're rushing to read and we're reading because it's kind of like work and we need to do this and we got to keep up. But where you were at this weekend, you were like, hey, I've got time. Let me just sit down. Let me put some fuzzy slippers on, maybe, light a candle and just enjoy myself. And I can read for pleasure because it's pleasurable. And that's when it's really fun. I need a weekend like that very soon. Because
there were other things I could have done, but I chose to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did. I had so much fun. And it was just, pick one, put it down, and that it was such a range of books added to that joy. I had such a blast reading comic books, and DC's in such a good place right now creatively.
They really are.
It really is. So I'm going to start with the book that should be the number one at all times, and that's the current incarnation of Justice League. The third issue came out 2 days ago. I don't have that yet, but I do have the first two. I know Steve at the very least has the first one. And where are we with Justice League? So this is post Absolute Power. For a
I still haven't read.
Yeah, for a brief period of time, Amanda Waller kicked the heroes' asses. The Justice League was effectively disbanded at that point. The Titans were sort of the prime team, but things changed, and the Trinity came to a decision that we have to involve everybody in the superhero community. And if this sounds a lot like a particular animated series that succeeded Justice League called Justice League Unlimited, a lot of this is not coincidental. It very much keeps within that type of flavor and concept of the animated series when they did expand the league and went up into space with the Watchtower as their headquarters. Oh, man, this was so good. Mark Waid is the writer. Dan Mora is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain is so beautiful on the colors on this. So where are we with Justice League? Again, they've expanded the team. They're up in the Watchtower above the Earth. They are going to deal with many adversaries and many situations, and they've formatted the team so that they can bring anybody who they can on call and team them up. And so it's going to be almost like a little bit like the old days when they would have the Justice League Justice Society team ups, and you would have combinations that were a little bit quirky. Sometimes it made perfect sense, like Flash and Flash, but at other times it was a little different. And you do have this flavor of widescreen bigness. So where the Justice League is at, Steve, if you could just start with some of the graphics. We start with Airwave, who is a legacy character that is joining the league. It's his first time up in the Watchtower. And almost immediately the Flash takes him on a tour, and God almighty, look at these colors.
Yeah, that's...
And I have to say, for at this point, probably his third act as a writer, Wade's about as good as he's ever been.
Insane.
It's insane. I think there was a feeling when 52 happened that I just had a feeling that Mark Waid, Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, and Greg Rucka had carte blanche to do whatever they wanted to in the DC universe beyond that point. It wasn't how it worked out, and it almost feels like with Mark, he's not taking advantage of that anymore, that he's relishing what he gets to do within this universe. So the first adversary that they're fighting, Steve, I think if you go to the, this is them arriving on the scene, but I think there's another graphic. If you can go after this one, please. You see them there. They're Inferno. They're a terrorist organization, and they're not seeking money or political upheaval. They just want to burn shit down. So they are in various locales with these, massive fires that are starting, which unfortunately is a little close to real life, depending upon where you live. And there's something a bit more sinister behind this than just 5 cloaked dudes. And the mystery unravels as we go through the first 2 issues. If you want to just provide some additional things, there's also an invasive species that are that also comes into the equation after one of the fires in South America, and you hear Costa Rica, you see, and some of this it turns out to be parademons, but parademons that are not led by Darkseid. Just some weird shit going on. And here you go with the quasi quirky team ups that go on in these adventures. You have Wonder Woman and Mary Marvel, 2 very similar characters, whether you know it or not. But how much time have they had together in comic pages? This is it's so much fun. It's epic. And it's exactly what a Justice League book should be. And I was so glad to have these issues in my hand. So glad.
Bill, can I ask you to explain something both for me and hopefully for some of the readers that they might have a question about?
Sure.
You mentioned earlier that a big part of this, of the all-in kick, has to do with also the absolute line that is juxtaposed with this. So just for our edification, what is the through line there? So how does Absolute and All In, how do they fit together, and what is the cohesive kind of movement there with
Okay,
these
so
titles?
Darkseid is dead.
Yeah.
And Darkseid's energies have dispersed.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know exactly how things fall, but we are now seeing that there is this absolute Earth. And it's in its, at least the storytelling is in its very basic stages. So a lot of that is TBA.
Okay.
Steve, would you agree after reading the All In special?
Yeah. I mean, Darkseid's dead in the main reality or the main universe, but then somehow was reborn, or at least his essence is reborn in what became the Absolute universe. And I don't think we're there yet with All In to find that, like, where's that connection happening? But we will with the release of Aquaman, because in Aquaman, the premise of the new series is that he somehow finds himself in the Absolute universe.
Also, there's another through line that's existing through all the books, is that there was, Waller took away the heroes' energies. They came back to some people, but other people got different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have a Superwoman who is Lois Lane. It turns out she has General Zod's powers. There's other heroes where their abilities are not exactly working the same, most notably Martian Manhunter, which is a smaller through line within Justice League Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that has a connection with the dissipation of Darkseid's energies or not, we don't know yet. It's very possible.
Okay. And so, like, I knew a little bit about that. I didn't have the whole picture, but I thought, hey, this would be a good chance for maybe if anybody who is like me and not current.
It's a great jumping on point.
Yeah.
It's so good as a jumping on point.
Well, and so much so that also played part and parcel. I mentioned this earlier. As of today, I'm officially a member of the DC Unlimited app on my iPad, phone, and everything else. And so hopefully this weekend, I'm going to be able to take a pause for the cause, pull up that All In special, and then start reading all of this stuff. And I'm really excited about reading the new Metamorpho book. I haven't read that yet.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, that's a perfect cue for you then.
Well,
yeah.
What I got. And hopefully I'm not going to spoil too much for you. I like this one. This one, I have to say, and in fact, I might actually start. No, I'll go with Metamorpho. So Metamorpho was one of the two books that I picked for this one, and this is an All-In #1, but it's a little bit different than the other All-In books that do tie very directly in with what's happening at the Watchtower, what's happening with the different Justice League characters, because now of course everybody is part of the Justice League, but there's references going on with what happened after Absolute Power and what happened with Darkseid. Metamorpho doesn't necessarily, or at least at this point, does not really talk about that. Instead, it goes in a very different direction. In fact, it takes it all the way back to the 60s, baby. And just, it doesn't take place in the 60s, but it might as well, because the language, the art, the layout, everything is very, very 60s referential, very Silver Age.
Such 60s pacing. It was amazing.
Oh. The pacing, the dialogue, the monologuing from all the characters. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it because of this reason. It's very, but it's tongue in cheek. It's done in a very fun, cheeky style. Obviously, Al Ewing on the in the words. You got Lieber and Luffridge with the art and the colors. I mean, it's a very good team to take this on. And so we have, of course, there's Metamorpho there with, his lady love, the Sapphire Stag. But this is your page. This is page 1 that you're confronted with. This could have been in any Silver Age book. In fact, when looking for this first page, so I could put it up here to share it with us for anybody who's watching live, I came across a ton of other Metamorpho page 1s that were in this exact same format, straight out of Silver Age books. And it's great. It introduces all the characters. If you don't know anything about Metamorpho, here's a couple words about him and his lady love and his boss, who's kind of a monster and an asshole, and his I guess basically his right hand man, who happens to be a unfrozen caveman from 10,000 some years ago. And then also we do have Elemental Girl, who's the female counterpart to Metamorpho. And then we have our new villain that's presented in this one, Mr. 3. And it's just a fun kind of setup. And then immediately it goes to this. What is this? It's some thing that's happening on some planet far, far away with two suns, one that's a round sun, one that's a hexagonal sun, and there's a duel to the death that these two completely unknown up to this point characters have just fought.
No, Steve, this is Prince Rahman.
Oh, Prince Rahman. Oh, I don't know.
He headlined his own series in the 60s.
Really?
Yes.
Well, awesome.
Is that a beetle?
That's great.
What?
So the person that Prince Rahman, which is he's the individual,
He's
kind of the Count Nefario looking guy.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
The budget Stephen Strange. Yeah.
He's a hero. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Budget
very
Stephen
good
Strange.
way of putting it. Yeah.
Which Count Nefario, if you know from Marvel, is also like the bad guy version of that. Yep. The other character kind of looks like almost like one of the Beatles. Like Blue Beetle kind of esque with he's got these weird things poking out of his back.
I was gonna say it's not George.
Well,
it's more Ringo. It's Ringo. Very Ringo here. so I don't know him that much because he was never in my Silver Age wheelhouse. No, I never read anything with him in it.
He's pretty much a forgotten character.
Yeah. But not anymore because Al Ewing's like, I'm gonna dig him out.
Yeah.
But there is a very slight. There's a slight connection here. And of course, in pure Silver Age fashion, the writer's like, I'm going to throw these things at you. It's not going to make any sense right now, but it will, reader. Just stay tuned. And basically, there could be some connection here to the Orb of Ra, which is what, of course, gave Metamorpho his powers, Elemental Girl her powers, and is the MacGuffin that is essentially being discussed here in this book. So Mr. 3 is attacking Metamorpho. He has essentially the powers of the Orb of Ra, and in a way have been taking, has the ability to take them away from Metamorpho. So he's almost melty. He can't attack. He can't defend himself. Elemental Girl shows up here. They work together to defeat Mr. 3 by creating a different element. But in doing so, they discover, hey, this Orb of Ra that Mr. Stagg has, that's a very powerful weapon. Also, Shade also has their own Orb of Ra. Oh, and this Mr. 3, who works for the Cyclop agency, he's actually essentially an Orb of Ra too. How many of these things are floating around out there? Who has all this power at their fingertips? Quite a few more people than originally expected. And again, I'm sure this is going to refer back to Prince Romano and the duel that takes place early in the book. But it is fun. Just the dialogue, the layouts, the internal monologues from these people. It is a perfect Silver Age type book. It's obviously a lot more mature. It's a lot more I'd say tongue-in-cheek. It knows what it is.
It's Al Ewing.
It's Al Ewing. He knows how to write in that style, but bringing in a lot more modern sensibility to it. But it's really setting you up with a tone, and that's what's really, I think, great about this book, is it gives you a perfect tone. And I'm sure that it's going to lead us down a path that we're going to be surprised and shocked and twisted by, but it is definitely something I can't wait to read issue number 2. It's just fun. And Metamorpho is just, unfortunately, one of those characters that constantly gets crapped on. People use him for a little bit and then they toss him to the side. He has just a really crappy situation that happened, that he exists in, where he's in love with this woman who's just devoted to him, but her dad is kind of evil and kind of keeps trying to kill him, or at least causes death in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't really care about him at all. Is the whole reason why he's been, turned into Metamorpho in the first place. But it's just it's an interesting existence that he has, constantly going through humanity crises. Am I a human if all I am are different elements, and there's nothing about flesh about me anymore. But yeah, this is going to be a fun ride. So
yeah, and I think one thing we do have to stress, and you did kind of do it with Steve, where we're saying it's not just a '60s book, and the dialogue. There's nothing in this book that doesn't tell me this doesn't happen at the same time as Justice League Unlimited 1 and 2.
Absolutely,
it definitely fits.
So,
Also, there's a really cool Easter egg in there. Steve, did you realize what city this takes place in?
Jump City,
which where Teen Titans Go happens.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Oh my God, I was like Jump City. Like I was, when I heard that, I'm like Jump City. I haven't. Where is Jump City? Who's in Jump City? Who's the hero? Oh, Teen Titans Go.
So this character really is like you mentioned, Steve. It really is the perfect character for Al Ewing to kind of write, because he does. I mean, if you read like his Defenders Beyond book with Javier Rodriguez, he's great with these kind of literally amorphous characters, but he can use them with the medium, right? He uses them with the page. He's able to talk to his writers or talk to his artists and be like, hey, we're going to manipulate what this is. And I think this is a great team, because like you and Bill hit the nail on the head with saying, hey, they're breaking the house style. We're like Steve Lieber, right? They're giving, I'm going to talk about a book here in a minute who has a different style, and it's kind of in that same vein. I think it's really cool. The other thing I was just going to say is, after seeing these graphics and seeing what they do, I would love this exact team to give us a Metal Men book. Can you imagine that? That would be super fun.
That is a very strong possibility.
Yeah.
James here says, wasn't Metamorpho also in the Ostrander Suicide Squad 2? I believe so.
Maybe briefly. I mean, through the 80s, his main place was in the Outsiders. Yeah. The last time we really saw him was in the Terrifics.
Yes. That was the last team
that was
he
the last
was in.
time we really saw him. Yeah.
And again, had those, existential crises, I think, every other issue where he was featured. So
yeah. And also, he was in the mix of Wahaha Justice League too, when Justice League Europe happened. He was one of the original members there too. So there's a lot of Prince Ramon.
Yeah.
He may be Prince
Ramon character might have been.
He started out as a detective named
I don't remember
Merlin, and then when the 60s hit and everything started going superhero-y, they made him a superhero book with he co-headlined with Eclipso.
Okay.
In House of Secrets, so that should give you some idea.
Okay, interesting. So I'll keep an eye out for that, because obviously, I know Eclipso and I like Eclipso's appearances, but I think I've only read just his stuff. I haven't seen he was part one of a part number 2 part of
forgotten character.
Storybook.
Really forgotten character. But he may be right. He may be in the mix in Suicide Squad. I get a little fuzzy when Suicide Squad hits the 90s. I was reading it, but I wasn't religiously reading it.
It was the 90s.
Yeah, it was the 90s.
I think the only thing I read of the Suicide Squad back then was probably when Bronze Tiger was the main.
Yeah, at the beginning, but
the headline leader.
There's a lot. I mean, think of how many characters have come out of that. Whether it's
and died.
Well, no, but also just that came to some degree of prominence, whether it's Deadshot or Vixen, as we mentioned, Bronze Tiger, Oracle. That was her introduction. So, yeah, a lot of stuff. Okay, Caleb, it's your turn.
I will. Let's talk about some birds.
Birds.
Yeah. So I want to kind of follow in line with the train of just follow the artist pathway that you guys have kind of walked down. One of my favorite series right now, just period in comics, just at all, is the current Birds of Prey arc. It is phenomenal. This actually predates All In and stuff. I'm sure they had plans for it and stuff, but this goes back to last year. Written by Kelly Thompson, but the issue I'm going to talk about is the tie-in issue. It's number 14. It's to All In. It's part of this ongoing series that they've been having, but now it's looping in to the overall big movement. And it's interesting, not in real ways. Like, you don't read this book and realize that, Darkseid's dead. Like we know some things are happening. There's weird machinations taking place, but it's not very heavy-handed in telling you just how this is a tie-in, other than maybe just, like I said, there are machinations afoot. But like I said, written by Kelly Thompson with amazing art by Sammy Basri. I'm not sure. Leonardo Romeo on the did the cover. Jordi Belair does the cover art, and just it's stunning. Just everything about this wins. So this book kind of opens up again. It's kind of mid-story. Like, there's been these things happening. There's this group called the Ninth Day. Like, they're like a weird subversive terrorist organization that I guess they have a good stylist too, because all of them are wearing these kind of like avant-garde outfits and very flowy. But they're not great guys. And the Birds of Prey are convinced that they have got something to do with these disappearances of Amazonian women, of Amazons. Again, I think last time we all were together, we talked about the current run of Wonder Woman. Amazons are effectively persona non grata in the United States. They're not allowed on U.S. soil. They're all at war. Well, because of all of these, it's really hard for them to operate. But Nubia has realized that, hey, I've got people who are disappearing. Like, there's 3 Themyscirian Amazons that are disappearing. There's 2 members of the South American tribe that are up and gone, and they don't really know where they are or what's happening to them. But somehow this Ninth Day is connected to it. And so they decide, hey, we're going to do an undercover sting operation. And they put it into action. And it's actually Cassandra Cain who is going undercover as this. I guess she is supposed to be just a grade A blacklist wet works person. Somehow Ninth Day has a connection to Catwoman. So they had called Catwoman up and been like, hey, we need a person to do a job. And Catwoman, who's in on this, said, oh, I've got your person. I'm going to send her to you. And through a series of tests where they try to set her up, they try to assault her, they try to assassinate her just to prove herself. It's Cassie Cain. She's just going to win. She's like one of the people. I mean, even Batman's like, I'm not sure I can take her in a hand-to-hand combat situation, right? She's a badass. And so she just wins. But they have no idea that who she is, right? They have no idea that she's undercover, at least that they're not showing that. But this is really hard because the Birds of Prey, if you're looking at the cover, these are made for, these are not women who are used to sitting on the sidelines, right? These are not quiet spies. They're used to jumping in the action. I mean, it's Big Barda, for crying out loud. She's not exactly dainty. So they're struggling with the fact that they're letting one of their team members go in undercover and they're not doing anything. And they're basically just waiting around for a signal for her. Black Canary's trying to keep everybody just, on calm down. There are these new characters that are I'm not really familiar with them. Grace Choi and then Onyx, who are I'm assuming relatively new to the DC universe, although Bill might jump in and tell me
Grace has been around for a bit.
Okay. I didn't know if she had her own series in the 60s or not, but
no.
So wasn't she Thunder's girlfriend?
Yep.
At one point? Yeah,
okay.
She and Thunder were
a very
together.
different version of her. But.
Yeah.
But so they're new to this team, and so they're trying to prove themselves and occupy themselves, and they are going to spar with Barda to help Barda blow off some steam. And there's this really great scene where they're just chit chatting and they're almost fangirling about how Barda and Diana went at it, and Barda almost beat Diana. And then she did like this backbreaker move on her, and she's like, "Can you imagine?" She was like, "How sexy was that? Like, is it bad that I just want to do that?" And like, I have the utmost respect for Wonder Woman, but I want to do a backbreaker on her. And she's like, absolutely not. Violence has broken us. We're broken people. It's really funny banter. And and then all of this, like I said, this is kind of a mid part to the story, but you really get to see Basri's just talent showcase. The colors, Adriano Lucas is doing a great job. I love this action scene that you're seeing right now. It's one of those scenes that's an open room, kind of an open concept panel, except you're seeing Cassie in her just almost all white suit, pantsuit with a vest, bare arms and stylish glasses, just flipping through the entire page, kicking all kinds of ass, while this group is just like, okay, she's doing it. She might be our person. It's a great job interview, and really showcases who Cassie is. Also, just as a side note, nothing to do with this story, but why do criminals keep going to Catwoman for criminal advice? How do criminals not know that Catwoman is not a bad person now? Like, if you're this type of like clandestine black ops organization, how the fuck do you take advice from Catwoman? Like, it's Catwoman. She Mary Bruce. She shows up with the heroes all the time. Like, what did you?
But she still steals stuff sometimes. So, and she does have that, that cat rescue that I'm sure requires a lot of criminal activity to keep running.
It's hilarious to me. Like, they have acknowledged and accepted that Harley Quinn is now a good guy. Like, criminals are not going to go to Harley Quinn because she's a good person now, but they'll go to Catwoman.
I kind of think she's kind of like the Dave Grohl. Like Dave Grohl is interviewed. It doesn't matter what music documentary you could throw Dave Grohl and he'll have an opinion of. You know what I mean?
In all of them.
Yep. Like Rollins is a little close to it, but Dave Grohl really has that kind of mantle. Where if you're talking about a '60s group, if you're talking about a '90s group, it's like, oh, Dave Grohl has an opinion on this.
Oh, I love it when he shows up and he's talking about these like '80s hardcore bands, right? Like, and I'm like, what the fuck? It's Dave.
And then he'll be talking about Pablo Cruz.
Dave.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'd listen to Dead Kennedys, but like then we'd listen to Pablo Cruz.
I have the world's biggest collection of Tito Puente albums, and I just have to talk about.
Which, I mean, to your point, I love stories like that because Dave Grohl. I'm not a Foo Fighters fan, but I think they're fine. But he is obviously an amazing drummer and well known.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just like, who believes that? So anyway, like, this is well worth it. If you have not been reading this, great opportunity to start. This is not exactly a jumping on point for this story. Go back a couple issues and kind of figure out.
But it's not. I don't think you really lose too much. Yeah, you get in some very pointed bits of dialogue. You get the big points.
You do, and they do a very good job with this of making it whole. This might be somebody's first comic, so we're going to give you the idea of what's going on in the background here as far as the Birds of Prey go. And introducing the characters, they tell you what's been happening with the disappearing Amazonians. They tell you who Nubia is to an extent, and just one or two lines. Really setting up a really cool scenario, and I really want it to play in with the current Wonder Woman run a little bit more. I'd like to see some more interaction there. I really would love to see another rematch between Barda and Diana. But I love this book, man. Like you said, female forward. I absolutely. Kelly Thompson doesn't get nearly enough credit for being just a writing powerhouse on these type of books. So need more of this, and artistically, stylistically, visually, it exudes fun. Like, I have fun reading this book. So
the arc is only 4 issues. This arc, I finished the arc, Caleb. I don't know how far you've gotten with this, and 2 of the birds are taken off the action, but it's not tragic.
Okay.
So it's not tragic at all.
Yeah. So I'm up to this issue. This is the last issue I've read. It's the last one I think that's available on the DC Unlimited app. Yeah. So that I cannot wait to read more of this though, because this
will enjoy.
This is good comics, man. This is
and
I just love watching Cassandra Cain. Like, I remember when Cassandra Cain couldn't speak, she was just little broken winged bird and just an assassin and dangerous, and now she's just this full-fledged amazing character that I've fallen in love with.
I think you
I'm
will
gonna bring this
also
up
really
again.
enjoy the Batgirl series that's happening right now.
Okay.
Which is,
Yeah.
basically her and her mother, Lady Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll enjoy that too. Another book I think you really enjoy, Green Arrow. Very, very much an O'Neill and Question type
Gotcha.
of 80s vibe.
Cowan.
Yeah, and Cowan,
Interesting.
yeah. It's definitely there. It's not there through and through, but there's some shared DNA. I think
I need to have another birthday soon so I can ask for a cop for like the Hard Traveling Heroes omnibus.
There you go.
It's gotta happen.
I do have to. I have to bring up this page again just because it's fun. But props to whoever was doing letters. The onomatopoeia here, the action words, whoosh and whammo. They make me smile, and I love that.
and the blam
Just-
blam blam.
blam 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 blam. That's fine.
There's
But
no
like
guns in
whoosh
here.
and whammo.
Yeah. Well, my next book has a link to this, and unfortunately, I didn't grab it like the other books. Like I grabbed the books that you gentlemen were talking about, but Steve has his copy, and we have the graphic here. And the next book I want to talk about is New Gods #1, and I am very hit or miss with Ram V. There's some of his stuff I really like, and then others it was homework to get through, like Swamp Thing. I just didn't resonate with it at all at the beginning. It got a little better at the end. But this is ideal for this gentleman's writing style. So again, New Gods are the cosmic Jack Kirby creation that define the fourth world. And they actually have not had their own series in some time. They've appeared, in major roles, but it's been a while since we've had a New God series. But we now have this ongoing. The artist is Evan Cagle, and man, he does some spectacular work. Steve, I have to ask you to move to the next graphic. Caleb, if you have not seen this, you're about to get your socks knocked off.
So I do want to interject there. Those the first 4 pages, I think, were Jose Fornes.
Those are Jose Fornes. Sorry,
Jorge Fornes. Sorry, yeah.
Fornes.
So
you're
the
still
first
going to
4
get your socks knocked off.
Gorgeous.
I mean, look at this page. So this explains what's happening. Okay, so Darkseid is dead. His energies have dissipated somewhere in the absolute universe, but we don't know the full story yet. It's unfolding. And New Genesis is in a position where they have to oversee Apocalypse. And also there is a new god being born. Now, Metron, he's like the classic pain in the ass. If he comes around, it's never good news. And he advises the New God's leader, Highfather, that there is a new god that's being born, and it's being born on Earth. And this is going to be the harbinger of very, very bad things. So, Highfather devises a plan. We are introduced to some of the denizens of New Genesis. Over here, Light Ray, who was a very faithful member of Highfather's inner circle. But the right person for this job is Orion, who is originally Darkseid's son, but was grown up. I speak well with words.
He's all grows up.
He grew up on New Genesis, while his counterpart, Scott Free, Mr. Miracle, grew up in Apocalypse. And we do have the connective tissue between Birds of Prey and New Gods, because Big Barda is Mr. Miracle's wife. They just had a baby, and the baby's killing them in terms of lack of sleep, so that she can almost kick Diana's ass at the same time as having a newborn. That it really shows you. So Orion receives the request from Highfather, and he knows what he has to do, and this does not sit well with Orion. He knows something is wrong with how they're going to go about this. So if you can kind of see what the dialogue is there a little bit, I didn't want to want to take away from this, because the Cagle has a really nice balance of human moments with the cosmic, and you have that here with just how much bigger Orion is compared to Scott. And Orion goes to Scott and says, when this baby is found, you have to hide him. You have to do something, because I can't kill her. And that was Highfather's word, is you have to kill this baby. And that sets off the next series of events where we actually do see what may be the creation of this new character. So this felt big. And like I said, Ramvi, he's a really good writer for these kind of complex and nuanced interacting between the fantastic and the very human aspects of life in the DC universe, I guess. And I really enjoyed this a lot. And this wasn't high on my list, because I think New Gods is a really difficult property to get right. It's tough. It's tough. And I think the setup that they have right now in this story, and that particularly the role that Orion is playing as the least the member that is of New Genesis that is the least connected to humanity, ends up being the most connected. I just think that's an incredible dichotomy how they presented that there. So,
well, and just the domestic, Ramvi, the stuff that I've loved from him, he's taken the idea of gods and played on their humanity. Like, he's very much into sort of like, okay, they gods themselves represent aspects of humanity, but what if they're more human than they let on? That kind of thing. And this is exactly what it is. These are new gods. They are cosmic beings, but like really powerful cosmic characters that have done quite a bit throughout, from Fourth World through now, DC Universal type stories. And the source wall features very prominently at the very beginning of this book. But it's the domestic moments between Scott and Bart. Well, I guess technically Bart is sleeping the entire time, but Scott is taking care of the baby, and just, he's having a time of it. But gorgeously enough, and again, Cagle presents this really well. Bart is sleeping on the couch. There's like all these panels all over the place where Scott is like putting up with dealing with his daughter peeing on him, and he's trying to change her diaper. He's doing all these things, and in the background, if you're not paying attention, you miss the fact that Orion is in his house, and Orion is standing just off into the shadows. He's putting a blanket on Barda. He's just watching this whole thing unfold with Scott and his baby, and the hilarity. And then they both go outside to talk. And Scott's like, okay, thanks for not stepping in and bugging me or waking my wife. That's really good. But it's just those moments in the quiet conversation that they both have are really great. And the moment where, Orion says, like, I may want to save this baby, but I can't because of who I am. And he takes his glamour off. Basically, he looks very human and handsome, but in actuality, he's
from Apocalypse. Yeah.
He's from Apocalypse. He looks like Darkseid, but with blonde hair. It's just a great moment. And Scott's looking kind of hot there in sort of like his scruffy beard and t-shirt with all the fur. But anyway, it was just really well done. And I love how this book goes from like these crazy high concept cosmic stuff to, a dad getting peed on from his baby. And it's just how, I don't know, it's just very well presented.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Ramvi and Tom King are both writers who do that really well. Who can take you from like this high concept and the use.
But it's not like Tom King at all.
No, it's a lot different. It's a lot different. But they both kind of have different writing styles and different tropes that they use. But they're very good about going from this kind of, like you said, these high concepts and then dialing them into these really. And I like the way Steve put it, the domestic moments. And that's exactly what Bill and I are on the opposite side of the coin with Ram V's Swamp Thing. I absolutely adored it, and partially because of that, and because of the way he uses those characters and those avatars and stuff. It's just fantastic.
I liked it. I like this. I liked the latter half.
Yeah.
The first half I was just lost.
And he has his themes. Brothers are a theme in his books. If you'll notice, he plays a lot up with that.
Good stuff. Just an excellent choice for a writer for this property. Excellent choice. All right, Steve, you got another book?
I do, and it actually ties into JLU. That first, the part of Justice League Unlimited #1 where Flash is giving, what was his name? Something
Airwave
a tour of the Watchtower. He briefly mentions both of the Atoms and their project that they're going on.
I'm sorry. I thought you were doing Challengers.
Oh, no, I did Atom Project.
Okay, so sorry.
Oh, no worries. I know you read it, so it's all good.
Here we go.
So I did Atom Project #1, and this one, of course, takes 3 of the prominent Atom characters, both the Ray Choi Atom, the Ray Palmer I can speak. The Ryan Choi Atom, the Ray Palmer Atom, and then Captain Atom himself. Obviously with a very different power set than the other 2. And this is something that's briefly mentioned in JLU #1, and it's in reference to the fact that Captain Atom himself has lost his powers completely because of Amanda Waller's task force. And both Ryan and Ray are part of the group within the Justice League that are trying to track down where a lot of these powers have gone. And they've basically attached themselves to random people, regular people who don't know what to do. The powers just kind of manifest, they go crazy, or their powers go crazy, and basically these guys are there to try and clean things up and try and figure out how to take the powers away from them and give them back to who they belong to. And unfortunately, Captain Atom at this point, he has been completely depowered. And at the beginning of the book, we see that he has gone on the run, and we're trying to figure out exactly why. And so they do the flashback to where both of the Atoms have gone out to save a little boy who's manifested some extreme electricity powers, to bring him back to the Watchtower, where they have a lot of these other people, these regular people who've manifested these extremely dangerous powers. And in the meantime are also trying to figure out a way to transfer the powers that they have to somebody like Captain Atom, who is now completely depowered. And I think like the moments here where you have them all kind of talking in plain clothes and just being, pretty honest with each other. Like they don't have all the answers. They're not sure what to do. They're not sure where to go from here. Captain Atom's having, he's having a crisis of self and identity because for such a long time he's been tied into that power, and that's been intrinsic to who he is. He's just kind of put himself at the mercy here. It's like, yeah, just keep shooting energy beams at me. One time it's going to stick. We're going to figure this whole thing out. And also at the same time, both Ryan and Ray are having these also internal struggles, having to tell these people who have been infected by powers that, yeah, we're definitely going to cure you. You'll be fine. Everything will be okay. And you can see in this panel here, this little boy he's crying tears of joy because he's like, finally, I'm going to be, these powers are going to be gone. Like, I don't know what where they came from. I can't control them, and they hurt people. Thank you for helping me. And the reality is they don't know. They don't know what to do. They don't know how. They're trying. They don't know how to solve the problem. And at the end of this book, you do see that Captain Atom has at least gotten some kind of power back, but not necessarily his power back. So something works in what they're trying to do to try and take powers away from other people who don't want them. And unfortunately, with Captain Atom, it seems like they've manifested in him in a very interesting way. And we need to see where this is going with them. I thought that Ryan Parrott and John Ridley did a pretty good job setting this up. It's definitely, I'd say, one of the darker All-In books in terms of tone, but also in terms of like coloring. You know, it isn't.
Yeah, I have something to say about that. Yeah,
it has a little bit of a like a darker kind of feel to it, but also it's not as hopeful as some of the other All-In books seem to be. And I think that's because you have a character like Captain Atom who has always been sort of, you know, finding himself in very tragic circumstances in one way or another. And I think that his last miniseries was just one long 6-issue slog of just sadness. And of course, the situation where you have people who are basically being imprisoned in the Watchtower because they're a danger to themselves and others. So it's a little bit different. And I'm curious to see where they're going to go with it, because I do like Captain Atom as a character, and I do think that it's hard to use him in things because he's so powerful. A lot of times they have to kind of nerf him in some way by giving him a lot of emotional problems. But it's going to be intriguing. It's intriguing to me how they're going to solve the absolute power fallout power issue. I don't know. I'm curious about this. How did you feel about this book?
I did not like Mike Perkins on the art. I didn't think he was the right choice for this, even though it goes to darker things. And some of this, I have to say, unfortunately, I read this on the same day that I read the Poison Ivy Swamp Thing one shot that he did the art for, which he was ideally suited for.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Depressing as hell. I mean, not a good time. Not a good time feel, but a well done book. And I just felt that another artist would have been just better suited, particularly to the science aspect. He doesn't strike me as a very sciencey artist. And, they've set up Palmer and Ryan as the two big brains of where the DC universe is at. They're in Justice League. They're in Justice League United. They're in The Question. They're in Challengers of the Unknown, and they're in this book. And in all those books, they have major roles. So it's kind of like Reed Richards split into two. Right. And I like that. I like their interactions. I like that they are in new territory, with trying to get everybody's powers back and dealing with these new people with their powers breaking out and all the other stuff that they have to contend with. Hope they're getting some sleep. But I just, that for me, the script was very tight. It moved very quickly, and I thought it was really good.
Opening, I
did not think Perkins was the best artist for this.
Well, I think for part of the book he might have been. And that was like the opening is very it seemed like right out of a Mission Impossible movie. Here's
or
Captain
Hitchcock.
Atom or Hitchcock movie.
Yeah, to me,
he's trying to keep
North by Northwest.
He's on the run. He's on a train. I mean, like that imagery of like just like trying to make it from one end of the train to the other without being spotted by the MPs that were following. Like it's just very much like, oh, this is really cool, and it's very realistic style. Perkins has a very realistic style that definitely works for crime comics. That definitely works for spy comics. Maybe not so much with like big colorful superhero comics, but that's why I'm saying like half the book I think would be perfect for him. Like the scenes where they're in plain clothes and they're just sitting around talking, the scenes where he's on the train, that kind of thing. But the action, I think, where the two Atoms are trying to capture the kid with the electrical powers, it stands out with the other All-In books because it's not as brightly colored. It's not as like
Who was the colorist on that?
Colorist is Adriana Lucas.
I normally like Perkins. I normally like Adriana Lucas's colors. I didn't like anything about that I saw. I'm not trying to. I don't want to be the negative Nancy.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like that's where it stands out for me is that it's a little bit darker, but
it's a very tight
in tone. But
very
also, you do have moments like this, like where Captain Adam's in this energy chamber to try to get his powers back, and it's well done. It gives you a good idea. It's like, oh my god, the red, it's electrical, but
I was trying to figure out who
the other all-in books is a little different.
I was trying to figure out who it reminded me of. Little bit of Bill, do you remember the Human Target book that came out like in the early 2000s? I think the guy, it's like Bukovic or something like that. That's who he reminds me of in that one. And it's not, I don't know, it's not my vibe.
Yeah.
He also has a little bit of a Kano vibe as well.
But Caleb, the script is really tightly wound, and
there's a bit of espionage. There's a bit of sort of like science suspense to it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued about where it goes because I don't think it's very clear.
The plot and stuff that you guys described does it sounds very like it sounds right up my alley. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get past that art to enjoy it. For me, a good story can't necessarily save bad art. Good art can save a bad story. I think maybe it leans a little bit too much into like the Kudaransky school of stuff for me, and I'm not a fan.
Well,
but I mean, I only saw a few pages. I will definitely take a look at it. So
especially since it's on DC Infinity.
Yeah,
it should be on Infinity now. It should be, because I think this came out like right at the end of December.
Well, no, Steve, a lot of the Olin books are on there no matter when they came out.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
I think right now the only exceptions are Justice League Unlimited is not on there.
I think 2
I think Challengers is like maybe Ultra only. It might not be. Yep.
So I know the first 2 issues of JLU is on here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wasn't there this
week. Challengers Unknown, the first.
If you haven't read Challengers, this is my sub. Do it.
You have Ultra Challengers, so you'll have
Challengers.
All you had to say for me to get me to read Challengers is that it's got Sean Isaacs on the art. I'll sign up for that dude any day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's good.
Dude is so amazing. Like he had me on Avengers No Road Home when I first found that guy, and I was like, this motherfucker. And he's South African. If you've ever heard him speak, ooh, just.
Okay. All right. We got one more book, and it's in Caleb's hands.
I'll do it. So we are going to end our all-in book with the way any DC conversation should feature, and we're going to center Big Blue in it, Superman. I have been reading Action Comics. It's currently one of my favorite books, written by some dude that Bill, I think you might have mentioned him earlier. He's the poor man's Peter David. Mark Waid, I think is his name.
It's terrible to say it about any writer.
I'm joking.
Peter David.
I'm joking. I have a high regard for Peter David, but that was obviously just for humor. So this book is the 8th part of this ongoing weird issue that's called Phantoms, and I'm not sure. I think the last couple of these books have been all-in tie-ins that have ran through here, but there's something strange going on. And Superman has kind of been taken off the board. Superman got sucked into the Phantom Zone, and you're like, okay, well, he's been there before. Big deal. It's the Phantom Zone. What's he going to do? Just float? But that's not what's happening. Something has happened inside the Phantom Zone where things are starting to materialize. Something is bringing matter into the Phantom Zone, which is causing all of these criminals that have been there to materialize, which they can cause damage and cause all kinds of terrible things. And so Superman is out there floating around in the Phantom Zone trying to figure out, and cut off from sunlight. And so there's a whole issue with that. But while all this is happening, as you might have been able to glean from the conversations that we've been having, things ain't exactly going hunky-dory on or near planet Earth either. In the Watchtower, the book actually starts off there. And you've got Martian Manhunter and the Flash hanging out in the Watchtower trying to figure out what is causing literally the sun to not implode, but just to kind of fade out. They're working with Mr. Terrific, who's been able to get up fairly close to the sun. And he's like, I don't know, guys, the energy's going somewhere, but there's no less nuclear reaction. Where's it going? And as you might expect, these things are intertwined. There is a figure, a being called the Ether inside the Phantom Zone, who is somehow possibly connected to this character that they just defeated called Zadu, who's managed to find a way to start materializing things in the Phantom Zone. And that's what's happening. He is soaking the energy outside of Earth's sun into the Phantom Zone to cause it to materialize and to literally grow himself to his stature. Like he's just constantly getting giant. But one of the neat things that we found in exploring the Phantom Zone, and there's a long and storied history of it, obviously, but one of the first people that Superman encounters when he gets there is somebody who's been like a brother to him in the past, Mon-El, who's a Daxamite, who has a lot of those same abilities that Superman has. Are Daxamite's powers sunlight based? Are they just kind of natural?
I don't think that's ever been made clear.
Okay,
I don't think they are. But the reason that Mon-El is there is because he has an allergy to lead.
Yeah. And it's everywhere in the universe. It kills him.
It's everywhere on Earth.
Yeah.
So.
And so he's slowly dying outside the Phantom Zone. It's kind of the only place he can exist. And so because things started materializing, all these murderers and criminals and terrible people who were there, all of a sudden became material. He's kind of had to fight to survive. He's turned into this weird kind of like Mad Max pirate guy who's a good guy, but had to do some, as you're going through the story, you realize he's had to do some things in order to save himself and to provide for the good. And he lets Superman kind of know, he's like, hey, like this Zadu character showed him how to do this. And he's not pulling pulling energy from some random sun out in space. This is Earth. Like he's killing your family right now. And Superman has to go try to figure out, he needs to escape. He's got his power bands on that have soaked up sunlight, but they're little batteries and they're not going to last forever. And as the ether continues to grow, and this is one of the things I love about comics, especially DC comics, right? And when they're in good hands, they acknowledge that physics are real. It's like DC's always been really good about that. And so they're like, hey, things that are your size have your own gravity. And so it all starts, the Phantom Zone and everything else starts to implode on him. And Superman has to find a way to escape because it's going to destroy the Phantom Zone. It's going to kill Superman. It's going to, he's not going to be able to save Earth. And he's going to lose everything. And there's this really tricky moment where he isn't real sure how he's going to, he's going to figure this one out. And it's one of those interesting Superman moments where Superman realizes that he may not be able to save something. He's not going to kill the guy, right? That's not what he's doing, but Superman might not be able to save this person or this thing from himself from what he's done. And that hurts Superman, right? That is almost worse than anything else. But you do really get to see the relationship with Mon-El. And while all this is happening in the Phantom Zone, we know what's happening on Earth. Out in space somewhere too, you also you get Connor and the Chinese Superman who is
Kenan.
Kenan. They're out doing their own thing. They have somehow, through the sheer dumb luck, Connor has become the leader of the Kuns, who's this warlike race who he had to defeat their leader to become their leader. And their biggest thing is they were mad at this other alien race who'd been raiding all of their stuff and taking them to museums. And so they're going to get all of the Kuns, cultural things back from these figures who have treated like a museum and stole all of it. Of course, they're like, well, you can't come take our stuff. And they're like, oh, the irony of you saying that, because yes, we can. Hilarious, really funny moment. They have this conversation while they're doing that about art museums, and Connor just doesn't care, but Kenan's like, oh, they're beautiful works of art, and also girls love it. He's like, oh, let's go to the art museum. It really showcases Wade's ability to transition from moment to moment, to take all of these characters and give them a separate, independent voice. Obviously, I don't know that anybody else knows the profiles of these characters better than Mark Waid. And to be able to wield them the way that he does with the history, talk about Easter eggs. There's so many things in here that you just have to have an encyclopedic knowledge of these characters to really be able to showcase. I have zero complaints about the art in this book. The art's by Clayton Henry, who's an amazing artist. Although this is one of the books that is more akin to what we would expect from a DC house style. It doesn't have that auteur artistic flair that we see from some of the other books that we've seen, but in no way, shape, or form is it bad. It works really well for a Superman book. So over the years, I never expected this, but over the years, I've somehow become a Superman mark. There was once upon a time, honestly, not that long ago, a few years ago, where I maybe had read 2 or 3 Superman stories. Now I can't stop reading them. I love it. I love this character. I love when he's done well. It makes me happy. And in a lot of ways, Superman stories, they're not escapism for me, but they do renew my faith in the human spirit. And I think that's what that character is supposed to do. And I'm glad we have writers that can do that with fiction, because it's necessary. This is where art heals, and they're using these to tell stories that the world needs to grapple with to some degree. So if you're not reading Superman, if you're not reading Action Comics, or if you're not reading World's Finest, you are doing yourself a major disservice right now, because they are all phenomenal.
James Figueredo also said Clayton Henry is amazing. He deserves high-profile projects like a monthly Superman.
Absolutely.
So clearly agrees with you.
Yeah, there was a lot I liked about this. Mon-El. This is the exact same Mon-El that appears in Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes during the 1 year later phase, which Wade wrote. I mean, it's the exact same voice. And, one of the conceits about the Phantom Zone is you don't age.
Yeah.
That was the only point artistically I thought was a little off, because I'm still viewing Mon-El as a teenager, and he wasn't exactly drawn that way here.
No, he looks more akin to Clark. He looks older, mid 30s. And
I can't imagine Wade doesn't earmark this version of Mon-El for the Legion, down the road in the 30th century, where Brainiac 5 has created the antidote, and then Mon-El doesn't have to worry about lead, and he's effectively the Superman of the Legion. We'll get there. I really liked Connor and Conkenan as a comedy duo.
And they work so well together.
They work so well together, that they call him Cooper Boy. He becomes the coon leader. And it just felt so natural too. And forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think this may be the first time Wade ever wrote New Superman, the Superman of China.
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but I think that may be true.
It feels like he's had his clothes in this character for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, and this makes me want to read a Wade written Super Sons miniseries too. I mean, I like this kind of duo. These characters young,
Yeah. But I think there's enough super family stuff happening now that we'll get it. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly peppered through World's Finest. The only downside to World's Finest is it takes place at an earlier point in history.
Yeah.
I thought the Supergirl backup series was okay.
Yeah.
I was actually really excited about this, since Tamaki wrote the Being Super series, which is out of continuity but was excellent. It's okay. But
for me, the Megan Hetrick art was the big draw on that one, because I like Megan. I think
we had 12 weekly issues of this. It's reverted back to a monthly series now. I'm not sure what the long-term plan is for Action, if it is going to be rotating writers, as we've seen here over the last few months, because I think John Ridley takes care of the next arc about major disaster. Becoming a hero again.
You do get a preview of the new Two-Face book in the back of this as well, that I'm really excited about.
It was good. It was so good.
Yeah.
It was really good. Yeah. And it's weird because it's a Two-Face book that doesn't feel like a Batman book.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good. Really, really good. I liked them. I liked them all. I didn't like Catwoman. I didn't like Mark Perkins' art, but by and large, like even Harley Quinn, I don't think the conceit of the book right now is something that's going to last very long, but it does give her some different comedic opportunities. in that she's in a different section of Gotham now, which has its own flavor. So I just thought across the board, we're in a really good spot with DC right now.
Also,
really,
Yeah.
Steve, can you pull the cover back up to Action 1077?
Oh,
I just
sure.
wanted to point one thing out that I thought was interesting. Number one, down here in the corner, you see Supergirl hugging Crypto, and they're all sad because Clark is gone, and that just breaks your heart. But I actually really love that Lois Lane in this cover is drawn to look like Lois from Superman and Lois. Like she looks like her so much, and I think that's a neat nod to it. Like I'm not normally I don't need a photo realism or photo reference, but I actually this looks like her to me, and I'm wrapping that series up right now, and so maybe I'm a little bit. Is there a word for being nostalgic for something that's happening concurrently? I don't know, but I think it's a good nod to it, and I really like that.
And also a beautiful nod to the Donner films with the Phantom Zone.
Yes, yep.
How that's presented too.
The diamond,
the plate, the plane, if you will.
It's the play.
Oh, it's a little bit late, so we gotta start wrapping the show up. And before we get to our last segment, we show off some of our geek gets that we've acquired over the last fortnight. Steve, do you have anything? I see something over your shoulder.
I mean, just the poster back there that is for Sabretooth, The Dead Don't Talk, which is a new miniseries out from Marvel, featuring Sabretooth post-death, because he's died multiple times since Krakoa. But I believe it's I want to say it's a six issue miniseries, four or six. I can't recall exactly, but it should be on issue number 2 now.
Yeah. No Sonic Happy Meals?
No.
Okay.
No, I have not gotten any Sonic Happy Meals. And now it's Pokemon, and I don't care.
Okay. How about you, Kill? What you got?
So my geek get no toys or anything. I did get a great new shirt though, that I'm super excited about. Mastodon is one of my favorite bands. I have almost their complete catalog. There's one vinyl that is not actively being reproduced right now that I can't get my hands on, or at least for the price that I'm willing to pay for it. So I was sitting around the other week, and Roger was like, "Don't you have all of their stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You don't have any of their shirts." I was like, "That is permission." So I ordered myself not only one but 2 shirts from Mastodon. So super excited about it. Love it. Got I don't know if you can see, there's like a little skull with laser beams coming out of the Jaguar's eyes. And there's rumors and talk that they are coming out with a new album next year, which the last thing that they came out with was actually a song that was a fantastic metal song that they did with Lamb of God. And it's so good. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. So that's my geek get. Listen to more Mastodon. It's good for your health.
Cool.
Okay. Is by any chance the thing that you don't have the Jonah Hex soundtrack on vinyl, or one of the live albums? What is it?
So there is a live album. I'll have to look it up to see which one I don't have.
Okay.
It is talk, and I will tell you as you drop your geek get.
Well, they have live at the Aragon and live at Brixton.
So I have live at Brixton, but as far as studio albums, I do not have. Number one, I don't have Floods of Triton, which is they did a vinyl of that, but it's just one song, so I haven't came out with that yet. I do not have. No, I have. Yeah, it is a live album that I don't have. It's live at the Aragon that I don't have.
Okay, cool.
Because I have.
That'll probably be pricey too. I imagine that's going to be like 3 albums because it's like 2 CDs. Yeah.
Because I've got medium rarities. I've got Emperor of Sand. Yeah, it's got to be their live albums that I don't have.
Okay.
They've got a lot of stuff. It's really and a wide range of stuff.
Yep. What album did I see them tour behind?
Crack the Sky or
Hushed and
Leviathan.
Grim. Hushed
Yeah,
and
Hushed
Grim.
and Grim. Yeah, that's probably their latest album.
Yeah, that's the last
from like 2 albums. Again, way different sound than what you're used to them having previously, but still very, very good.
Yeah, the closest they come to psychedelia.
Yeah, and it's like psychedelia, but sludge metal.
Yeah,
too.
Okay, unlike these two guys, all I got was toys. So,
Toys!
So, in my continuing pursuit of superpowers figures, I got the short pack ones from not the current wave, but the wave before. So I was able to get the Fleischer variant of Superman.
Ooh.
Yeah. And though the glue fell off, I do have the Dark Knight Batman.
Oh, nice.
From the superpowers line. And I got more Batman related figures. Spin Master has the mass market, actually shares kind of the mass market license with McFarlane for DC, and these Target exclusives of these retro figures, man, they did a great job both in the sculpt and the packaging. These are from Batman Forever. So I got, I'm shining that too much, but I got Robin and I got Riddler. There also are Two-Face and Batman figures that I haven't come across yet. But I just think they did.
The Riddler figure's great.
They did great jobs with the packaging on this. Yeah. Dem's my...
Oh.
What?
Oh, I was just going to say, like, for Geekettes, but we have a announcement for one of our listeners, Lima Nato. Per James has just tied the knot officially with his husband Raphael. It was beautiful. There was not a dry eye in the room, according to James. James, thank you for letting us know, and congratulations.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. We want pictures, obviously.
I'm just wondering, James, would you also say parabens for a wedding, or is that just for birthdays? Because I think it means like happy celebration or something. I don't know. Maybe he'll chime in. All right. Okay.
Congrats in Portuguese.
So we're going to wrap up an episode. This one is coming to its end. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar where we woof at something which may be comic book or comic book related, or also maybe a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, should sample. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
So I was struggling to figure out what my woof of the week was, and then I realized I've actually been having so much joy and so much fun with a relatively simple sitcom from Canada. And it is called North of North. And it's about a Native woman she's a young mom and has decided after very messily splitting from her husband that she's going to be redefining herself and finding out who she is in her small town. Problem is, it's a small town. Everybody knows who she is, and they kind of have these expectations already set for her. But it's a lot of fun. The acting is great. Anna Lambes plays the main character, Siaya, but Marilyn Reichskub also makes an appearance as well as sort of like the town mayor / community organizer that she works for. And it's a ton of fun. It's on CBC right now. You can get it online on CBC Gem. It's just fun, and it's sunny, and it makes me smile, and it's made me tear up with happy tears. So I recommend this, especially given today's environment, something this bright and sunny. Even though it is very cold because it takes place in Nunavut, and there's snow, and everybody is always wearing like really big fluffy coats and amazingly cool boots. It will take your mind off of things that suck. So North of North.
Very cool. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week also goes out to a televised series. This is actually from 2023, though, and you can find it on Netflix. Unlike Steve's show, it's not going to take your mind off of things that suck. This story, it's based on a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. The story takes place in Nazi-occupied France during World War II. And it is a story about a young blind French girl who is she's basically broadcasting. She's not supposed to be, but she's she's telling stories, she's reading books, and she's helping out with the underground. The things that she are reading are actually code, and there are several different figures who are aware of this broadcast who are hunting her down. Her father was actually a gemologist for a local history museum. And so you have got part of the Führer's folks that are looking for him, and they're going to get connected to her because they're trying to figure out where these gems are, especially this one that has some occult aspect to it. There is a young soldier, a young German soldier who did not want to be a German soldier. This was not a situation that it seems like, at least the way the story goes, that he was on board with, and is doing things that would probably get him shot by his own people if they found it. So very, very stark. Does have moments of bleakness, but also has moments of humanity. It's a very interesting period piece if you know anything about Vichy France and what they were doing there. It was really, really well done. Not without some just kind of controversy, though. I was looking up some of the history of it, and there was a lot of things that critics of the show did not like, that they seemed to put Allied soldiers and German soldiers. They kind of just like co-equivocated them and pretended like they were, there's some equality there to them, and it's like no, there's really not. But that's. I would like to read the book after I'm done with this, just to see how the book treats it. It won a Pulitzer, so there's got to be something there worth reading. But fantastic cast, fantastic writing. If you're not wanting bleak, this is not the show for you right now. But I'm just going to lean into depression. Why not? Let's go for it. So,
okay, great.
My wolf.
2 TV shows. Steve, I have to ask you to put up a graphic for my Wolf of the Week, if you would. And my Wolf of the Week goes out to Bishop Marion Edgar Buddy. The reason that she is in the national spotlight right now is because on Tuesday, she delivered a sermon. Again, she's Episcopalian bishop of Washington, in the Washington, D.C. area. The person who was elected president of the United States was in attendance. And during that particular sermon, she, offered in her, in what she said, that the millions have put their trust in the president. And in the name of God, she asks him to have mercy on people in our country who are scared now, including the LGBTQ communities, immigrants, and refugees among them. And of course, we have a man-child in office right now, and he didn't take too well to that. And it seems to me that as we have the people who are listening can't see the graphic, but when she was asked about this, she was quoted, "I am not going to apologize for asking for mercy for others." And that's a very necessary voice that we need right now. The more I read about her, the more and more I'm impressed. She's a Jersey girl, so she's got that for her. Grew up in Flanders. And also, it turns out that she was principal in arranging for Matthew Shepard's remains to be buried within Washington Cathedral. Matthew Shepard's parents never had a public burial for him because they had a constant worry about vandalism. And in Washington Cathedral, good luck to you doing that there. It also turns out that in the 53 hours since she delivered her sermon, her most recent book has sold out at every outlet. The name of that book is How We Learn to Behave, Decisive Moments in Life and Faith. And some of the reviews basically provide, like, this is a religious reading for people who aren't religious. So that sounds like something I would cotton to. So we need voices like this right now. And that's who my Wolf of the Week goes out to, Bishop Marion Edgar Buddy.
So the response, especially, I live in the South where evangelical churches are everywhere. And I am not a Christian. but I was raised and steeped in the Church of Christ, an evangelical church, and I am ashamed, not shocked, but ashamed of a lot of people that I know who have came out and who are MAGA, but also who have, spoken about what she said as if she should apologize or to be ashamed of it. And if you, are cosplaying Christianity or at least trying to use that, again, I'm not a Christian, but I've read the book a few times and I hold true to a lot of its sayings. You might want to open up Micah chapter 6, verse 8, where that book tells you what God requires of you, which is to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God, which is effectively what she said. So if you have a problem with what she said, your problem's not with her, your problem's with Christ, and that's not who you're following right now. So you might want to get right with that.
No, I mean, I don't think it's a bold statement to say that United States evangelical Christians are the most unchristian people out there.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not a bold statement. They're not following Jesus. They're following something else. And
power and greed.
It's, like you, Caleb, I'm not somebody that identifies as a Christian at this point in life, but, grew up Catholic. I've always viewed Episcopalian as kind of Catholic light. But I do think if I was ever going to regularly go to services again, it most likely would be Episcopalian because of where their head's at right now. Yeah. It's a very good place. You don't have to be a Christian to lead a Christ-like life. And there should be more people like that out there. And when you do encounter voices in the faith community that are centered on inclusivity, that's a nice development. It's a very, very nice development. So
it's not hard to do when you follow it's not hard to do when you follow the commandment of just loving your neighbor.
Yeah.
It's not hard to do. It's not hard to do. Love your neighbor. There's no conditions on that.
No. At all. Okay. Welcome to the occupation.
Or welcome to the resistance. I choose to look at it that way.
One of the best quotes I saw. Let me just pull this up, and I think this is a nice note to go out on. Let me just pull this up. This just came to mind, but you know me, I take pictures of everything. And that you guys verify that for the audience. It's true. Conversations, very often there'll be a picture from me in seconds.
Oh yeah.
Let me just pull this up. I just thought this was such a great quote. And also feeds into some of the reactions we've seen to a particular healthcare official, CEO getting Luigi'd. They want 1930s Germany, but they're about to get 1790s France.
Oof.
All right. On a brighter note, we'll be back in a fortnight to talk more about funny books, and we're going to keep doing it. And guys, I am so excited that I am so excited again. I really am. I really am. And, I know that I've, particularly moved away from independent books, and I've just been, after this was done, I started going through some of the independent, some of the Marvel books that I've had, ridiculous stacks of right now. And I'm back. I'm back about reading comic books and just appreciating what a vibrant art form this is. And I'm so glad we have this outlet to talk about it. And we will talk about it again in 2 weeks. And again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on most of the social media platforms as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, you can catch us through most of the major podcatching platforms. If you want to view us, there is always our YouTube channel. If you joined us tonight through Facebook Live, thank you. As always, please like and subscribe and leave a good review. It's always appreciated. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back again soon. Take care, everyone.
Wolf.